Hello and welcome. Welcome to this webinar. My name is Claire Howard, Vice Principal of Pre-16, and we're delighted that you can join us for this session focusing on ways that you can support your child's self-management. During this webinar, Guy Hewson, Director of Learning for Pre-16, and Sarah Ellison, Director of Learning for Post-16, are going to start this off by providing you with an overview of the 10 key self-management skills that we provide opportunities for your children to practice and develop over their time at West Island from years 7 to 13. And whilst you listen to some of these skills, you may reflect yourself as an adult how practiced you are in some of these skills. I'm sure we all feel at times that our self-management isn't where it should be. And it's very much an up and down journey for all of us, isn't it? Some days we feel like we're on top of things, some days we don't. And on the days where we don't, we need to make sure that we've got the tools and strategies in place that we can pick ourselves up from and start again. Once Sarah and Guy have talked to you about that overview, they're going to hand over to Hugh Brown, who's Head of Information Technology, and Hugh's going to talk to you about how you as a parent can navigate your way through Google Classroom, Google Calendar and Google Drive. And I am sure if you feel you can navigate your way through that, then you're going to be able to help your child navigate their way through that as well. And then finally, Sarah and Guy will talk to you about some of the questions that you could ask your teenager to get them to open up about their self-management, and we'll take some questions at the end if we've got time. And just to say to you, if you can hold off on your questions until towards the end, and hopefully we will cover those. So Guy, I'm going to hand over to you to start talking about pre-16 self-management.
Great, thanks Claire. And if Hugh, you can start screen sharing, that would be great. If you could go on to the next slide, please, Hugh. Thank you. So for parents, through the one-to-one programme in Pre-16, which are the students in years 7 to 11, they will be using the approaches to learning, or ATLs, as an opportunity to critically evaluate their skills as a means for personal self-management, as well as receiving guidance in all these areas through the tutoring programme. For year 7 students who enter West Island from their primary school, they have moved from an environment where they've been used to one teacher and being based in one classroom to multiple teachers spread across a large school site. This transition process is such a critical phase for a young person that to support them settle into our schools through learning self-management skills will help them feel comfortable and settled as quickly as possible. They're also coming together for the first time from a range of different primary schools, which we're aware, and need to get to know each other as a cohort, making new friendships and making new connections. Year 7s will therefore focus on some basic areas of self-management, such as bringing the necessary equipment and supplies to class and being kind, thoughtful and inclusive with other students, which speaks to our school values of compassion and consideration. In the first tutor time, all students in Pre-16 were shown how to link their school timetable to their Google Calendar to enable them to see visually their schedule and easily link to their Zoom lessons. And hopefully your child has been able to achieve this at home. As the year progresses, year 7s will revisit folder management on their Google Drive, following an introduction to this on their first day at West Island School, and which Hugh will speak about a little bit later on. This ensures that they maintain the good habits we've introduced. As a minimum, all your children in years 7 to 11 should have folders set up in their Google Drive for all of their subjects, with subfolders for different topics or units of work. When we return to learning on site, we will also help new students make effective use of their school locker to ensure they are not carrying around heavy bags with unnecessary equipment in them. During last term and this term of school suspension, we've been reviewing timekeeping and attendance by your child to their Zoom lessons. Again, it's a really important self-management skill to acquire. And for some children, this may be quite natural and your child be able to manage this already. For others, this may be an area for children to have some guidance and additional support from their tutor. To help your child manage this, if they are struggling, you could encourage them to check their schedule the night before. Make sure they have the equipment they need. Your child could also review their work from last lesson to ensure they arrive at their lesson fully prepared. And finally, ensure that they are up in good time for registration with their tutor. If we could move on to the next slide, please, Hugh. As students progress through the school, they will start to learn more complex self-management skills for their personal organisation, such as meeting deadlines, planning assignments, setting goals, and responding to feedback. This supports the students as they prepare for GCSEs and the final phase of their pre-16 journey. In years 10 and 11, students also gain access to Elevate, which is an Australian company we've been working with for the past 2 years, and who help prepare students for pre and post-16 examinations. This includes aspects of self-management such as scheduling revision timetables, maintaining a positive mindset, and an area where students frequently struggle, maintaining focus. If you would like to listen to members of the Elevate team, they have invited West Island parents to join a webinar on Tuesday, the 15th of September next week on the topic of the 3 most effective time management strategies for your child. It starts at 6:30 for an hour, requires a sign up through the Elevate website, which we will share the link with you a little bit later on. It's mainly targeted towards year 10 to 13 parents, but it is available for everyone to join. Whilst I have pinpointed particular areas of self-management, we would focus on during years 7 to 11. This doesn't mean that a student can only reflect on that skill at that time. We appreciate that all students are individuals and it's important to develop these self-management skills at their pace. Your child's tutor will therefore adapt their conversations, support, and guidance accordingly. In summary, for pre-16, the tutoring team across all the 5-year groups seek opportunities to open up the conversation with a student about their own self-management, and we recognise that students will want to develop their own style and their own approach. Tutors use this individual time to review and reflect on their progress and guided activities in tutor time to ensure that this becomes a strength and develops our students' lifelong skills in this area. I'll now pass on to Zara, who'll talk about the post-16 phase.
Hello, parents. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. In the post-16 phase, we obviously strive to build upon all of those skills of self-management that have been layering up throughout your child's time at West Island School. In particular, what we want to happen is that not only are those skills explicitly taught, but they are implicitly in the classroom, in the lessons that are going on every day that your child is experiencing. So building on from what Guy is saying, we also in the post-16 phase use Elevate. And what's really fascinating about them is that they are actually looking at the science of learning. And this is something that students actually get very, very excited about because they're used to learning content, but they aren't that used to asking themselves questions. They're quite sophisticated about how do I learn? And it becomes very, very personal and a very, very effective tool. By the time that they get to the post-16 phase, they will have had quite significant experience of being tested and being examined and managing their time. And that's something that as their courses change and they have to spread their time in perhaps a more complex way with all of the demands upon them, we continue to work with them on their study and their revision timetables. Also, looking at a lot of the educational research that has been done, it's students who go above and beyond that really, really excel and they exceed in their courses. So we also encourage students to manage their courses at school, but also fit in time for extra reading to kind of get that really, that real depth of knowledge and understanding in their chosen subjects that they are looking at in the post-16 realm. Another way that we encourage students to think about learning is not just working on their own, but getting together in little groups of study pods, really. So connecting with their peers who are looking at the same subjects that they are, and meeting together in a different way to kind of bounce ideas off each other. So it's not just solely, study doesn't just solely become something where a student is on their own and quite isolated. Also, I've talked about time, and time is very, very magic, and we have to, it's a continual life skill to manage it effectively. So we try to encourage the students to work smart, and we do a lot of work with them in that area, and getting them to understand how to prioritize and the importance of that. And then again, something I think that is something we're all guilty of, it's basically thinking about how they can buckle down, how they can get rid of the procrastination. I'll put it on later, I'll get to it later, I'll get to it after I've watched this on Netflix. It's really, we give them lots and lots of strategies to try and help them focus and really get to it and achieve the tasks that they have ahead of them. Hugh, could you do the next slide for me, please? So in terms of the approaches to learning at West Island, we cover lots of things at post-16, and we give the students lots of strategies. So we want them to go away and do a little bit of research and find out things that work for them. So I've just included this here, and it's a little part of a placemat that we give the students so they can focus on the range of skills. And in particular, I wanted to talk about 3 aspects of self-management, which are just key to success. Organisation. So this Pomodoro technique that we teach the students, it gets them, and many of them I know use it at GCSE, but it gets them to look at time itself, really, really focus in on time, and basically make sure that they set their targets. They then have a 25-minute window of studying, a 5-minute break, and then another 25-minute window. And then they can go back and review how effective their learning has been in these kind of little short bursts that they're doing, rather than kind of sitting at a screen, phasing in and out, and losing focus. So that's something that we help them with quite specifically. Also, something that we really promote at West Island School is the growth mindset. And I know a lot of you've heard of Carol Dweck and the work that she's done at Stanford University. She's a psychologist, and she's done a lot of work into resilience and how actually it's the way that we deal with not achieving our goals that is the key to success. So it's basically building our skills of self-belief, setting your own targets, believing in yourself, knowing that direction that you want to go in. And that's something that we use the careers team to help the students with in the upper school. So if they've done the research, if they understand where their skills are and where they want to go, often their achievement really, really improves. And then we get them to reflect on their learning, because assessment is consistent, and we get them to look at how they've done on assessments, and we get them to think about their personal strategies that they use. And if I just talk about a couple of them, we get them to think about how they retrieve information and give them strategies for retrieving that information. We get them to think about how they can improve their brain plasticity, how they can think about concepts that they learn, not just by using language, but by using images as well, to kind of really help them remember abstract concepts. We also ask them to elaborate on their ideas. Have they got in the exam examples that they can give that examiner, which is going to add depth to their answer and push them up the mark scheme. Thank you very much. I'll just pass on to Hugh now.
Hello everybody, it's very nice to not see you all, but to know you're all present. And I'm here today to talk to you about some of the technology we use at West Island School, and to try and give you some tips and techniques about how perhaps you could get involved with that technology use at home. And some of the skills that maybe you could apply to help your children improve, to help your children understand what's going on, and to help them become a little bit more organized. But this all comes with a proviso. Nothing I'm going to give you today is something that you're going to be able to use remotely, sitting in your office miles away from your children. It's going to be essentially you working with your child, sitting next to your child. And a lot of parents find this particularly difficult. Your children are reaching an age where their technology is an expression of their independence, and they fiercely guard this, and they'll try and avoid letting you into this in any way they possibly can, because they see it as their independence. But some of these techniques really would help you sitting side by side with them, talking through some of the things that are going on at school. So my first piece of advice to you is, please don't be afraid to have these conversations with your children. They will be a little bit defensive the first time. They will need barriers. They will need these barriers breaking down. And how do you do that? How do you break the barriers down with your child with their technology use? Because they may be doing lots of things independently, individually, and you've no idea. And that's the case with many, many, many parents. And essentially, you need to talk to your children about their tech use. And by that, I don't mean what work's been set at school today. Show me your Google Calendar, show me your Google Classroom. The barriers will come up straight away then. You need to sit down and talk to them about what interests them online first before you push your agenda. Currently, you know, you can sit down and you can talk to them about YouTube. I'm sure many of your children are watching many of the latest YouTube sensations, and they watch them for hours. And as you take an overview, it might seem very banal, some of the things they're watching. And some of them are, but some of them are not. Just currently, just at the moment, there's a big genre going around at the moment where the kids are watching American university students doing out their dorm rooms on their first day, and what do their dorm rooms look like and things like this. And they go on for quite a long time and they seem a little bit uninterested. But if you step back, that's actually quite aspirational. You've got a 13-year-old child watching students going to MIT or Duke and sharing their first day at MIT and Duke. And these children are watching this voluntarily. So there's a lot of positivity in there, but you can sit down and you can talk to them and say, well, what is the latest sensation? What are you into? If your children's a great gamer, what games are they playing? What game why is that? Can we play it together? I'll come on to this a bit later on, but you must do that first before you try and push your agenda of organizations, schoolwork, assignments, and all this type of thing. So please try to do it in that order to break down this defensive behavior that the students will automatically, your children will automatically come up with. The first thing I want to talk to you about today is Google Calendar. We've had a massive push on Google Calendar at school. As Guy said earlier, all the students now have all their Google Calendars accessible, all their timetables are accessible, all their Zoom lessons are accessible. And let me just show you what that looks like for any one of our students at West Island School today. So you'll see here, this would be a Year 9 student's timetable, just a couple of days of it. And at the top there, you can see they've got the school day. That comes in automatically, and any events that are happening in school, hopefully very soon, that'll fill up and they'll have access to all of those. Then you've got their regular timetable, and in between they've got various appointments and Zoom lessons that teachers have made with them. So your children are managing this as we speak, from Year 7 all the way up to Year 13. And please don't be afraid of it. You can see here that there's a lot of duplication. That's because the purple ones are your child's timetable in their personal calendar coming through. The ones over here with the Zoom links are their Zoom links that they click on to access their Zoom meetings. And you'll see that some are fully encoded, fully colored in, and some are only outline colored in. What's happened here is that the child has clicked yes, they're going to attend that meeting. And here they haven't clicked anything. And there's no requirement for your child to click yes to attend the meeting, but it's just to let you know that that these things happen. There's also other meetings here. This Whiz Me Up is something organized by the Chinese department for children to have online pen pals and access to those. And again, that happens in the Chinese calendar timetable. And those calendars start to look very busy. But please don't be worried if when you look at your child's calendar on a Sunday night or sort of even Monday morning, it looks like this, because it only gradually populates during the week. So, you know, that will happen as the teachers do the invitations, as the MEOP invitations go out. So please don't be afraid at the start of the week that it looks very blank. Later on, it'll look very busy. There's a tool here that you could spend some time teaching and working with your child called Google Tasks. Google Tasks seamlessly integrates between Google Calendar, Gmail, and your smartphone, your child's smartphone, and their computer apps as well. What happens here? There's a little icon in their Gmail, there's a little icon in any of their apps. It's this icon here. And all they need to do is they can click that and they can start to make a to-do list. So they can drag emails into that. So emails from teachers that relate to assignment deadlines, emails that relate to meetings, emails that relate to projects or project work. They can drag that in automatically and it'll automatically create a to-do list for that child. They can then, if they wanted to, with further organizational skills, is they could break that project down into subtasks and they can mark them as complete. If they put any dates into the Google Task, it will automatically show in their Google Calendar. There's plenty of videos and plenty of tools to show you how to use this tool, to show your children how to use this tool. And we're gradually pushing this through the pastoral system as well. So if you wanted to spend some time, so how do you keep organized? Have you thought about using Google Tasks? What happens if we drag this over here? How would you break that project down? Let's break it down into Google Tasks there. That's something that you could do with your child. I'd like to move on to Google Classroom. Google Classroom is an immense piece of software, obviously given to us by Google. There's an enormous amount that it does, and it has many, many, many functions. I wouldn't dream of going into them now in a 2-minute period. All I'm going to do really is show you the bits that we think you should be interested in, and the bits where possibly you can help your children a lot in a very short period of time. You can see over on the left-hand side, this is taken from a tech ed place about how teachers can use Google Classroom. It's just 10 things they can do. And over there, there's sort of 20 different things that Google Classroom does. But today, we're going to focus on the summary. But before we do that, we get this question a lot, and it's with you well known. Parents don't have a direct login to Google Classroom itself. That's only limited to children, to students. You get a class summary, which we'll go through later on, which is a daily email of events that have gone on. But if you wanted to access your child's Google Classroom, again, you're going to have to sit down next to them, get them to log in and get them to give you a guided tour of their Google Classrooms. Just before we start, there's two different features that you need to be aware of in Google Classroom. There's the stream and the classwork. Whenever you go into Google Classroom, you'll see a stream button and a classwork button. You'll see over here that on the left-hand side, the stream is the conversational side. It works very much like Facebook. That every single post that gets listed gets put into chronological order. Students can respond to posts, and teachers sometimes will use that as a virtual forum, posting a question, say everybody post their answers and all this type of thing. But over the course of an academic year, that can get very long and it's very unorganized because it's very much a chronological order thing. So what you'll see most of when you do go into your child's Google Classroom is the classwork tab. The classwork tab is where the teachers organized all the content for the term, the year, the semester, however they plan to organize it. They put them into units, they'll put the work into units, there'll be assignments, there'll be material, there'll be questions. And it's far more structured, and you can jump to the various sections within the classwork tab there. So when you go into the classroom, don't necessarily just look at the stream, because you might find that quite misleading and think it's quite unorganized. Actually, click on the classwork tab and go across to the classwork tab. Right, so I did say, just as I started, I premise this with how can you help your child? We think the best way you can help your child in Google Classroom is with the assignments. And you'll see here, this is a classroom page. You can see up here the stream that I was talking about earlier on, and you can see the classwork as well. I was just looking for a mouse pointer over here, the classwork text. And then we can go over here. You've got a key to all of this, but the one we're interested in here is the assignments and the upcoming assignments. And the best place to find those would be in the classwork tab over here, which we'll just jump to now. So these are sort of examples of of assignments, and you can see here that we've got bits of work that come in, and we've got different icons on the left hand side. This would actually be from your Google summary, which I'll deal with later on. Okay, but what I really wanted to get to was this slide here. So once you've opened up an assignment, and you see an assignment there, there's 3 ways that you can really help your child. You could say, right, it's in my Google email summary, in my parent summary, it says, I've got an assignment. You've got an assignment, please can you show it to me? The child or your child opens up the assignment, and then particularly the younger children, go through the assignment instructions that are in this section here. So underneath the title of the assignment, there'll be the assignment instructions. That could be written in quite educational English. I mean, you'll know your child. Does your child understand that? Get them to discuss what the requirements of that assignment are. And every assignment will have assignment instructions. And just question and ask, and if they seem okay, they probably understand. The next one is the marking rubric. This is something we've started to push. Google only put it into the into Google Assignments in May, June last year. So it's had very little work, but it's very, very, very powerful. So it's a rubric, and the teacher can mark the assignment by clicking on the relevant section in the rubric to tell the child what mark they're going to get. But these rubrics they're available as the assignment is published, before your child starts on the assignment. So if a rubric's there, and gradually there'll be more and more rubrics, but if the rubric's there, click on that button, click over there, the whole rubric will open up. You can then go through with your child and say, what do I need for 5, a 6, a 7, and an 8? And it will be graduated. So obviously for an 8, the child will need to have done a lot more work, presented a lot more evidence than they would for a 6. But again, talk to your child and go, right, what are we aiming for here? Right, okay, so we need to do this, and use the rubric, break the rubric down for your child. And finally, in the assignment that we want to talk about here is the teacher comments. These will vary during the progress of an assignment. If an assignment's particularly long, the teacher will be adding comments going along. It might be that the work's missing, it might be that the work needs improving, it might be that, and then you could sit with your child and just go through those teacher comments. It wouldn't take very long, and that would be time very, very well spent with you and your child working together on this. Okay, what I want to do now is finally the one tool that you could perhaps use away from your child. If you wanted your child's schedule, their timetable, this is importable from your Guardian summary page in Wisdom. So if you'd log into your Guardian summary page in the usual way, click on this icon here, and then you'd see this option down here, calendar links, and you can just copy that. That's what's called an iCal link for those that are familiar with this type of thing. You can just copy that iCal link into whichever calendar system you use, with Apple Calendar, Google Calendar, any type of this, where it says add by URL. You just add that calendar by URL, and your child's timetable will automatically be created as a calendar in whatever calendar system you're using. It's a dynamic calendar, so that means if your child's teacher changes, their rooms change, even if the timetable itself changes, it will automatically show on your calendar. And that might help you while you're away from your child see the lessons they've got coming up. But that's perhaps the only sort of remote tool that we're going to give you today. Okay, I've made reference to the Guardian email summary quite a few times. You have all had an invitation at the start of the year to receive Guardian email summaries. This is how you are going to find out what's going on with your child, the work that's been set, the questions that have been posted, any upcoming work. And I'll just break down the Guardian email summary in the next slide. If you haven't accepted that email summary, I would strongly suggest that you do, as this is a daily way you're going to find out from school the work that your child is doing. Okay, and I'm sure as a parent, and it's laid out in a very specific way, so it's sent daily or weekly. My advice to you would be receive it daily, because if you receive it weekly, there's going to be a lot of stuff there, and you're probably going to get swamped. But nevertheless, they're all laid out in exactly the same way. At the top of the list, perhaps they've thought about parents, what do we want to know most of all is what work has your child not turned in? All right, so every assignment has a deadline. It must be turned in on or before the deadline. Once it's after the deadline, it's late. It's marked as late, and it'll show up in your Guardian email summary as missing work. So again, perhaps you could discuss that with your child. It's very easy to find because all of the missing work is at the top of the email. As you can see here, this Chinese assignment here for this child is missing. It was due on the 27th of August and they haven't yet completed it. Upcoming work is work that's coming up in the next couple of days if you receive daily emails, or the next week. So again, if you're working with your child and you're planning, and your child's planning their time, this is where you would want to spend a lot of time. Okay, tell me what you've done, how are we preparing for that? The deadline's due in 3 days, And finally at the bottom, where there's a lot of business, a lot of things going on, any announcements the teachers have made is shown by classes, any questions recently posted by classes. So again, so you get a good idea of what's going on in your child's class through these Guardian emails. And I hope that breaks it down. So please feel free to go back. And I'm going to give you an email address at the end. So if you haven't received this, or you've lost it, or it's disappeared into spam, we've got an email address, and you can email that and we'll send it out to you again. Just finally, this is a must, could and should. When you do see your child's emails, you should see that the work is divided into must, could and should. This allows you to see what's an absolute requirement, which is obviously the must, what the child should be doing to make good headway in this work, and then the could is sort of how can they extend themselves any further. So in your email summary, you will see that, and please don't be afraid. So you understand what that means is a must, and must is an absolute requirement. So again, work with your child and say, show me these musts. Okay, I want to move on very quickly to Google Drive. Google Drive is a file management system for those of you who are unaware. This is important regardless of what age your child is. Does your child's folder look like this? Please ask them to show you, sit with them, sit down. There should be a folder for every timetabled subject. It should be nice and organized. Some of them color code them, and that's absolutely fine, but it should cross-reference very quickly. The reason we say this is because the students of many ages, their folders maybe look a little bit like this. This is just random, sort of in my drive. They've accepted the default position. There's no organization to this. And this is the case of students in every year. We've got some students who are very organized and some students who are still learning organization. Because remember, organization's a executive function, which filed organization most definitely is a learned skill. It would, ask your child, have they organized their work? Have they got folders full? And just get them to show you. And if you see lots of files like this outside a folder, then it's not organized and they need to put the work into the right folder. It makes their lesson time so much easier if they can find the files that are related to those lessons. And a final top tip is do check the subfolders. So for example, this student here, year 7 student, who's got the work in year 7, individuals and societies, but within there's various subjects within individuals and societies. Has your child got adequate subfolders for each of the subjects within a faculty? So just be aware of that. Okay, I did say earlier on that if you need help with any of this, this is the email address that you can send an email to. So if you haven't received your Guardian email summary, or you've lost your Guardian email summary invitation, we can also put you in because there's some tutorial guidances here on how to use some of these tools, but we can also point you to the parent toolkit as well, so that there's more tutorials there for you to learn how to do that. I'm just pausing so that you could take a screenshot or write down helpdesk@wiz.edu.hk, and we can then use that and send the relevant email you send to the parties concerned. Okay, and I think it's time to move on. I hope you've had enough time to catch that. We can always go back to it later on. I want to pause now. This is not a tech tool, and this is very important, and they will spend a lot more time on this with the counsellor webinar next week. I want to talk about managing your child's devices before and during curfew. Sleep most definitely matters for our students and for all children. And the amount of sleep they need never ceases to amaze me, is how much recommended sleep your child is supposed to get. If we look here, children 6 to 12, and that's our students easily in years 7 and 8, and for some of, maybe even some of the early year 9s, they need 9 to 12 hours sleep a night. And even going up to our senior students, they need 8 to 10 hours sleep a night. And COVID, the lockdown, I suggest, has been good for this. That's perhaps one of the silver linings from this, is that your child has probably been getting more sleep during lockdown than they have normally, because we start school very, very, very early. So how can you make sure that your child is getting enough sleep? Some strategies that we can perhaps agree upon to get to some of these magic hours. Last year, our digital leaders did a survey of all year 7s, and we tried to find out what time was their bedtime. And we were surprised when we got this really quite nice normal distribution curve come back, where obviously most of our year 7 students are going to bed somewhere between 8:30 and 9:30. We can safely say from that graph. On the left-hand side, that's the count of number of students, and we've obviously got 180 students in the year group. The reason I show you this, particularly there's younger year groups, is as a parent, I know you're very isolated. You're a parent by yourself. You could talk to your friends, obviously, but I think when your children are protesting that nobody else goes to bed at 9 o'clock, you can feel assured that, yes, perhaps they are going to bed at 9 o'clock and your child's just pushing it. So the reason I show you this graph is to give you a little tool to use with your child to know, yeah, actually, what I know is right, and I know that this bedtime is right. And if you look at that normal distribution, we've got about 60% of our students, 70% of our students going to bed within that 1 hour window. And that was just a tool. It obviously shifts as your child get older, but even the year 8s don't shift that much, to be perfectly honest. The year 8s and the year 9s as well. So again, a little tool. So when you're putting your child to bed at 8:30 or 9 o'clock tonight, please, when they go, it's not fair, nobody else does this, you can go, well, actually, I now know that 70% of West Island School does do this. This is really important advice. Please remove, no matter, really, and I know it changes as your children get a lot older, and I know we've got some senior parents here, parents of senior children here, remove the devices from your child's bedroom. At night when they go to bed. Don't let them charge the devices in bedroom. We've done a lot of reports, a lot of surveys, a lot of anecdotal stories. We talk to our children and they do use those devices very late at night. Even though they're saying it's charging, they might not use them straight away, but they might wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and start a little text battle with their friends and all this type of thing. So their sleep becomes interrupted. And this happens to quite a few students. The best way for you as a parent to stop that happening is to remove all devices out of the bed space after curfew, after bedtime. Don't let them charge there overnight. Have them out in the living room, living area, where you can see that they're charging. And if the device isn't on charge somewhere where you are, then you can look across and you can go back and you can get the device. This continues to be a good piece of advice for sleep matters for students of all years, but of course it does get more difficult. There's also a lot of evidence that says you need to get your children off sleep for an hour, a good cyber wind down time. Get your students away from the devices a whole hour before bedtime, before lights out, before curfew. A good wind down routine stops their brain being stimulated by all the blue light. Brings them to rest. It also gives you some time to talk to your child where they're not just absorbed into their various devices. I hope that I've tried to make clear by these last few slides is please don't accept it's not fair, nobody else does it. Because I strongly feel that you as a parent, pretty much if you feel that something's wrong with your child, if you know that they're doing something wrong, then they almost certainly are doing something wrong. And I know you're good parents, you get worried that, oh no, perhaps nobody else is doing this, but actually, perhaps they are. So please just remember that if you think it's right, it probably is. Just very lastly, I'm coming to the end of my spiel. I did talk about these later on. I'm just bringing back to where we started, is how do you start these conversations, tech conversations with your children? Ask them about their YouTube channels, ask them about their friends' YouTube channels, ask them to show you, ask them to play a computer game, ask them what their favorite computer game is at the moment, ask them what they're watching on YouTube. Sit down and watch with them before you start pushing your agenda of Google Classroom assignments and all this type of thing. That brings my part of the presentation to the end. Thank you very much. And here we go.
Thanks, Hugh. Fantastic. And thanks for all that good advice. Hugh, we have had some really great questions come in regarding Google and the app. So if you could have a look at those questions, and could ask Sarah and Guy to join us now. And Hugh, you can keep on screen now, and maybe you can have a look at the questions that are in there, Hugh. And then we can just have a quick chat to you about the questions you may ask your child and conversation starters. I would say one thing about, and it was a great question that came in from a parent, how do I have conversations about management skills with my teenager? And the age our children are in their teen years are not always necessarily open about sharing that. I think one piece of advice is, if you are going to have a chat with your child about how they're getting on, choose a time which is more informal. It might be when you're washing up, it could be when you're going for a walk, it could be when you're driving to the shops. So choose a time which is more casual and less pressured, and you will find that your child will open up more than they might do if you sit them down and have that very intense, serious conversation. I know sometimes that needs to happen, but I really would urge you to choose your moments. I think the other thing to think about when you talked about assignments, and if your child hasn't done an assignment, rather than go in with, why haven't you done that assignment, is to say, oh, I noticed on your on the summary that there was an assignment that looked overdue. Is everything okay? And again, if you use that approach, your child will probably become less defensive and open up. So our advice to you is to use open-ended questions that enable that child to share things with you where they don't feel necessarily threatened. So how's it going this week? Or if you're a year 7 parent, or I haven't used Google Classroom, can you show me how it works? Why don't you show me your favorite subject? And then you can just show me how you would navigate, because I'm really interested in that difference between the stream and the classroom section. So think about them. We have got some questions that we've put on the end of this slide for you that we would like to share, and we will share these slides with you, by the way, at the end of this presentation. We'll go out with the parent bulletin. We'll leave you to look at those questions, but we haven't got that much time left. I just wanted to pass over to you, Hugh, because there's some questions there about Google Classroom, and I think you can answer them. The one I can answer, which was, are mobiles used in particular lessons? The answer to that is yes. Sometimes mobiles are used in particular lessons. I'm an art teacher, and in my class, for example, if we're doing a photography unit, then the phones will come out for that particular session, and it will be a conversation about how to take composition, etc. So that is one time, and there'll be other subjects, but it's not commonplace. And before we did go on to online learning, we were being quite clear with young people that their phones needed to stay in their bags, not come into the classroom unless otherwise specified by their subject teacher as a tool for learning. Hugh, over to you on those other questions.
Yeah, hi. I'm just going to address these open questions. The first one is quite important, actually. Do you need a Gmail account to receive the Guardian summary email? Yes, you do. If you don't have a Gmail account, I would suggest you just open a Gmail account. It's free, it's easy, but you're not going to get the Guardian summary unless it goes to a Gmail account. there's a parent here who received the summary on a daily basis, but it changed to a weekly basis. Down at the bottom of the email, of the weekly email, there's right at the very, very, very bottom, and it'll be long because there's a lot of work in there, there'll be an option to change the settings and to change that back to a daily email. If that doesn't work, please just email the help desk and we can help you fix that. Okay, there's one on dynamic IP addresses that I think well, I might take offline because I think that's very, very, very technical. There was one about can the students see past assignments in the classroom? Yes, they can, once the teachers returned the assignment. Again, if my child's been given a task and is stuck or in difficulties, doesn't know what to do, should they email the teacher? Yes, I would suggest they absolutely do email the teacher if they don't have, if they're in difficulties, particularly whilst we're offline, then the child should be the child's sort of first course of action.
And you also, during lesson, there's the private chat function on Zoom, so the child can always contact the teacher during the lesson.
Yep.
Can I just add just a quick note there as well, just in terms of, I think sometimes it's easier to think about conversations with your children than the reality of how they actually go, because you pick up on whether they're struggling and you sense whether they're unhappy with some of the grades that they've got. So if you do get this little hunch and your child doesn't want to open up, please contact your child's tutor, because they really are that kind of linchpin into success. So if you can speak to them and it can be confidential, and therefore in the one-to-ones they can initiate conversations with your children about how they're managing their time and how they're progressing.
And there's another question here about a student in year 7 who's using their laptop for learning, but the parents encouraging them to take notes, but they're struggling. I would suggest this is something that note taking is a skill, and it's a skill that we do teach during tutor period and form time. I would suggest that you practice. Practice is going to, don't expect them to have, to be instantly able to do it. Spend some time working with them to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a very sophisticated process, note taking, and in year 7, if you're asking your child to take notes but the teacher's not actually asking them to take notes, there'll be a good reason, because they feel they're not at that stage yet and note taking is required. So also trust your child's teacher in terms of the skills that they're giving them, and there might be a reason why note taking is not been introduced in year 7, because it is a very sophisticated one, and as Guy and Sarah were saying, as they move through the school, that's something that becomes taught explicitly in class time. And Hugh, there was another one there was a few about guardian summaries coming in, and one parent was saying that they've got daily, they did have daily last year, but now it's gone to weekly, and how can they change it back? So can we just ask parents to contact the help desk if they need to?
Of course, if you're in any difficulties, always contact the help desk. But with that daily to weekly, just scroll down to the bottom and click settings. But if you can't do that, please just email us straight away and we'll get back to you. Again, if you've lost the Guardian email summary or it's gone to a different email account, please just email helpdesk@wiz.edu and we can put you on the right path or fix the problems.
Okay, that's all we've got time for this webinar. I think just want to reassure you that this is a really long journey on self-management, and I think as adults ourselves, if we reflect on our own self-management, as I said at the beginning, there's good days and days that are more challenging. The key thing is we're here to support, we're here to work with you, and we're here to work with your child. And do not hesitate to contact your child's tutor. Thanks very much, everyone, and take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.